So, I'm going to start to do video recordings here because I found had quite a few problems with uploading and moving around audio files there. So this will probably be the first of a bunch of them there. Uh, what I'm talking about on this here is an idea called Return to Midgard. I'm not sure if it's a wider idea, but I came across the notion on a gal called Carolyn Emmerich's YouTube channel there. And it's essentially the idea of people practicing modern forms of pagan reconstructionism there. And trying to, I suppose, find a worldview that works for them. Because, I mean, if you're it doesn't matter if you're getting into the druidic stuff or the psychedelic Christianity or any kind of spirituality. Really, it's because something about the modern worldview doesn't work for you. It doesn't quite fit. And so anyway, I'm not sure if it's a wider idea, but that's where I came across it there. And I had some thoughts on it because I had already, I already do some things there that I think are relevant to that notion. And it's called the Return to Midgard because it's essentially finding strategies, I guess you'd say, to to make your worldview work. For example, one of the better videos on that channel that I found was how to make your home more authentic to the native European style. There's lots of weird little things we do with our fireplaces or stuff over our doorways that we've been doing for thousands of years without realizing it. There, we've just found them quirky styles or whatever there, but they have quite deep roots there. But so there's those solid things, like putting iron around your door, horseshoe on the outside of your house. Gnomes on the lawn are one that that's a physical representation of a way we've been thinking for fucking ages. Brass crickets around the fireplace. A lot of that representation is there in Pinocchio. If you check out Geppetto's house there. But I had a few more esoteric and more linguistic ideas there. This is one thing I've been doing for quite a while is trying to refer to the days of the week as what they are. Sometime during the late Saxon, early Norman period, there we formed our days of the week. We dedicated days of the week to different gods and themes. And there's debate about what that really meant. It doesn't appear to be at that point a primarily religious thing. But as an English speaker, I find it totally regardless of what was meant when the days of the week were named after the different things there. They are named after the different things. The days of the week are dedicated to, for example, the Moon's Day, Tiwa's Day, Woden's Day, Thor's Day, Thunor's Day, Frigga's Day, Saturn's Day, and the Sun's Day, the Day of the Sun. And that is both the sun, the wheel in the sky, but also much more importantly at that time, the sun, the holy sun, Jesus's day. But it's interesting that we have Jesus, Saturn, and the moon all represented along with our older traditional pagan gods in our days of the week there. And anyway, so when I'm writing out to myself, I don't use it in impractical situations. If someone's not going to know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to, I'm not going to confuse them about what day I'm showing up there, and then just to force a conversation about, what the days of the week are named after. But it's really one of those things that becomes obvious once you start thinking about it there. It's, of course, our worldview and our days of the week are named after things. And most people just don't think about it. But when you start thinking about it there, it's quite neat and quite interesting there. So that's one thing I do is, when I'm writing out and planning for myself there, I write them out. I guess I would say re-anglicize them there. So I just refer to, Thursday as Thunor's Day, Wednesday as Woden's Day, and so on. And yeah, this can be done larger. I don't do this so much there, but I think with the acknowledgement of the seasons, and when you're planning out and looking at your year, to start thinking about your year in the same way, our ancestors did. Because this is something, see, one thing about the Reconstruction movements that is kind of, I guess it's a problem I have with it there, is that, I don't believe in, I don't believe you can force yourself to believe anything. That's what I believe, anyway. And I certainly see some people, or at least in, there's some notion of this out there in those communities that, they're trying to force themselves to believe something that they don't really believe in, the reality is, is most of my beliefs are very esoteric, they're more of like ways of categorizing the world, it's a worldview, not a, it's worldview more than it is a belief system. Because when I explain to people about stuff like the weird, my thoughts on Ragnarok and what it represents there is that most people are pretty down with those ideas. There's nothing that I can say that's represented there that is not fundamentally true. It's just I look at it through that lens because it helps encapsulate it all for me. It gives me one cohesive story. It gives me, things like the weird give me, one word that I can use to describe, the consequences of our actions throughout history and everything else that it represents, Yeah. But the so with the return to Midgard thing there, the seasons are another way that people can do that there. Thinking about the days of the week. And like I've seen other where people are doing very solid concrete things with their homes and stuff like that, but also just their embodiment and their actions and stuff. But I found naming the days of the week and thinking about my time here in what I call a re-anglicized sense. I guess that's a larger way in which I'm doing that as well. That return to Midgard thing there. Of course, that would be probably the inappropriate term there for an Anglo, but nonetheless, I find looking at the English words that I'm saying and recognizing, at least just in some way acknowledging what it is that I'm actually saying when I'm using those words. When I call something weird, for example. I think that's a small part of what that return to Midgard means, what that reestablishment of a old world, and it's not really an old world. The reconstruction is something new. It's that next bite out of the apple. It's we can't really go back to that worldview because if you understand If you understand even in the slightest some of those worldviews, they're so wildly different than ours there. Um, but I think understanding what we mean when we say different words there is just important in and of itself there. So when we're talking about days of the week, when we're doing things like calling something weird or calling someone a troll or things like that there, to just understand and appreciate what we're saying. Because, it's underlying the way you're thinking about things, whether you recognize it or not. It's a part of an established system of representation um, that in some sense we've built off of, but we've even forgot what we've built on top of it as well. You know, um, when we talk about time and our categorization of minutes, hours, days of the week, years, the cycle of seasons and months and everything. A lot of us don't even, understand what it is we're talking about when we're talking about the actual modern words themselves, let alone what underlies them there. But anyway, that's just some thoughts I had. I think there's a lot more ways, but I think I'll save that for another thing. The main thing I wanted to talk about was like the days of the week there, and how how that's really become a way to take my time more seriously, I'd say. Um, when in speaking, uh, you're dedicating the way you're thinking about your future to something, and whether or not you give a shit about that thing, like Saturn, for example. I don't know shit about Saturn really. I'm not that educated on that there. Um, but at the same time, just acknowledging that Saturday is to that old I believe it's a Roman god. Um, it really helps you. I suppose it helps you appreciate our common worldview as well as the establishment of a new worldview. It helps you appreciate what's there because a lot of it still is there. A lot of this is well I say everything's moving forward and things are a little more modern and stuff. At the same time, there is a piece of that is an authentic return to an older worldview. You know, um, but that as much esoteric, ethery shit as there might be out there, it doesn't have to be like that. Just recognizing, the way we break down our time, I think can be a big piece of that.